Have you ever wondered why some people would rather drown alone than reach out for a helping hand? That coworker who stays up all night struggling with a problem you could solve in minutes, or that friend who's clearly overwhelmed, but responds with a forced smile that everything's fine. These people are everywhere. Maybe you're one of them. Science reveals that behind this apparent independence lies a complex psychological web that may be sabotaging relationships, careers, and even mental health. In the next few minutes, I'll uncover the hidden secrets that even these people don't admit to themselves, and how a simple "I need help" could be the difference between a life of silent frustration and one of true fulfillment. From an early age, many of us learn to value independence. We celebrate the self-made individual who conquers challenges alone. Movies glorify the lone hero who refuses help, even when surrounded by willing allies. This cultural messaging seeps into our minds, creating an invisible fortress around us, brick by brick, experience by experience. Think back to a time when you faced a difficult task. Maybe your heart raced a little faster at the thought of asking someone for guidance. That hesitation wasn't random. It was the product of countless subtle lessons about what it means to be strong, capable, and worthy. This fortress serves a purpose. It protects our ego, shields our vulnerability, and maintains the image we want to project to the world. The walls grow higher with every "I can handle it" we utter when we're actually drowning in responsibility. Each time we say "I'm fine" when we're anything but fine, we add another layer of stone. The irony is that what begins as protection often becomes a prison. Inside these walls, we struggle alone with problems that could be solved through collaboration. We reinvent wheels that others have already perfected. We spend precious hours figuring out solutions that someone else could explain in minutes. Our brains are wired for connection, yet we isolate ourselves in the name of independence. We confuse asking for help with weakness, when research consistently shows that the most successful people are often the most connected. They don't know everything. They simply know who to ask. The invisible fortress affects different people in different ways. For some, it manifests as perfectionism, the belief that they must master everything themselves. For others, it shows up as chronic overwork, taking on more than any single person could reasonably handle. Some become expert deflectors, changing the subject whenever their struggles come up. Others transform into advice givers, always ready to help others while never accepting help themselves. What makes this fortress particularly dangerous is its invisibility. We don't see the walls we've built. We simply feel their effects: the exhaustion of doing everything alone, the frustration of slow progress, the loneliness of facing challenges in isolation. Breaking through these walls begins with recognizing they exist. Notice the next time you automatically say "I've got this" when you're struggling. Pay attention to the physical sensations, the tightness in your chest, the knot in your stomach, when someone offers assistance and your instinct is to refuse. The fortress wasn't built in a day, and it won't come down in a day either. But awareness is the first crack in the foundation. Once you recognize the walls, you can begin to question whether they're truly protecting you or holding you back. Behind every refusal to ask for help lies a story, a narrative about what it means to need others. Maybe you believe that independence equals strength. Perhaps you've learned that relying on others leads to disappointment. Or you might carry the weight of past rejection when you dared to be vulnerable. These stories are powerful, but they aren't unchangeable truths. They're interpretations based on limited experiences. Challenging them opens the door to new possibilities. What if strength isn't about doing everything alone, but about knowing when to collaborate? What if independence isn't the absence of support, but the freedom to choose when to seek it? What if the most successful people aren't those who never need help, but those who've mastered the art of asking for it effectively? The truth is that none of us are truly self-made. Even the most accomplished individuals stand on the shoulders of teachers, mentors, friends, and supporters. They've simply learned to incorporate assistance into their success story, rather than viewing it as a sign of failure. The invisible fortress might feel safe, but it limits what you can achieve. Beyond those walls lies a world of connection, collaboration, and growth that happens only through interaction with others. The question isn't whether you need help. We all do. The question is whether you're willing to open the gate. As we explore why some people struggle to ask for help, remember that the fortress wasn't built overnight. It's the product of experiences, beliefs, and fears that have accumulated over time. Understanding these foundations is the first step toward dismantling them. The fear of judgment, when asking for help, feels like confessing failure. Behind those fortress walls we just explored lurks a powerful emotion: fear. Not the heart-pounding terror of immediate danger, but something more subtle and persistent, the fear of judgment. This fear whispers that asking for help isn't just admitting you don't know something, it's confessing to some fundamental inadequacy. This fear has many faces. There's the worry that others will think less of you, the concern that you'll appear incompetent or unprepared, the anxiety that once people see your struggles, they'll never look at you the same way again. These thoughts might not be conscious, but they influence behavior nonetheless. What makes this fear especially powerful is that it's not entirely irrational. We live in a society that often does equate needing help with weakness. Job descriptions demand self-starters, who can work independently. Performance reviews reward those who take initiative and solve problems autonomously. From school to the workplace, individual achievement typically garners more recognition than effective collaboration. The brain processes social rejection in the same regions that process physical pain. When you contemplate asking for help and imagine potential judgment, your brain actually anticipates pain. No wonder it feels so uncomfortable. Your mind is trying to protect you from what it perceives as genuine harm. This fear becomes particularly intense in competitive environments. When resources, recognition, or opportunities seem limited, showing any vulnerability can feel dangerous. If everyone is fighting for the same promotion, why reveal that you're struggling with something your competitors might handle easily? Cultural backgrounds also influence how we perceive asking for help. Some cultures emphasize collective support and mutual assistance. Others prize self-reliance and personal achievement. Your family's approach to independence and interdependence shapes your comfort level with seeking help long before you consciously think about it. Gender expectations add another layer. Men often face particular pressure to appear self-sufficient, competent, and emotionally contained. Women might worry that asking for help will confirm stereotypes about being less capable, especially in fields where they're underrepresented. The paradox is that while you fear others will judge you harshly for seeking assistance, research shows most people actually view those who ask for help more favorably than expected. The helper's high is real. People generally enjoy being useful and appreciated. When you avoid asking for help, you might actually be denying others the positive feelings that come from being supportive. Consider this. When someone asks you for help, do you think less of them? Or do you feel a connection, perhaps even a boost to your own sense of competence and value? Most likely, you experience the latter. Yet we rarely apply this same understanding to how others might view our requests. The anticipation of judgment often feels worse than any judgment that actually occurs. The mind catastrophizes, imagining worst-case scenarios that rarely materialize. The colleague you feared would think you incompetent might instead be flattered you valued their expertise enough to consult them. Breaking free from this fear starts with recognizing the difference between facts and interpretations. The fact might be, I need information about this project. The interpretation is, asking shows I'm not good enough. Separating these helps you see that seeking help is simply an effective strategy, not a character statement. Another powerful approach is to reframe help-seeking as a strength rather than a weakness. It demonstrates self-awareness, wisdom in resource management, and commitment to optimal outcomes rather than ego protection. The truly insecure person isn't the one who asks for help. It's the one too afraid to admit when they need it. Watching others navigate help-seeking can also provide valuable perspective. Notice how your respect often grows for people who can transparently acknowledge when they need support. They seem confident enough in their overall abilities to not be threatened by moments of uncertainty. As this fear of judgment begins to loosen its grip, you create space for a more balanced view of independence. Being self-sufficient in some areas doesn't mean you must handle everything alone. In fact, knowing when to tap into collective wisdom and support is a crucial meta-skill in today's complex world. Moving forward, we'll explore how these patterns of avoiding help often begin long before adulthood. The roots of this behavior frequently trace back to childhood experiences that taught powerful, often unspoken lessons about vulnerability, worth, and relationships with others. Deep roots. How childhood experiences shape our relationship with vulnerability. The patterns we've been discussing don't appear suddenly in adulthood. They grow from seeds planted years earlier. Like trees whose roots spread unseen beneath the ground, our attitudes toward asking for help develop largely out of view, influenced by countless childhood moments that may seem insignificant in isolation. Think about the messages you received growing up. Perhaps you heard phrases like, "Figure it out yourself," or "Don't bother others with your problems." Maybe you were praised for independence. "Look how well she plays by herself," or "He never needs any help with homework." These comments, though seemingly positive, can implant the idea that needing others is somehow less desirable than handling things alone. Family dynamics play a crucial role in this development. Children who take on caretaker roles early, perhaps due to a parent's illness, addiction, or absence, often internalize the belief that they should be providers of help, not recipients. They learn to suppress their own needs to focus on others. Later in life, this translates to difficulty acknowledging when they're struggling. Similarly, children from households where emotions were dismissed or treated as burdensome stop crying. Don't be so sensitive. Learn to handle difficult feelings privately. Asking for help requires admitting something is wrong, which means confronting emotions they've been taught to hide. The experience of reaching out and being rejected or criticized is particularly formative. A child who asks a busy parent for homework, help, and receives an irritated response, "Can't you see I'm busy?" doesn't just learn about that specific situation. They learn that their needs are inconvenient. A student who raises their hand in class only to be mocked for a wrong answer doesn't just learn about that question. They learn that vulnerability leads to humiliation. Educational settings often unintentionally reinforce these messages. Traditional schooling typically rewards individual achievement rather than collaborative problem-solving. Tests are taken alone. Asking for clarification might be seen as not paying attention. Helping classmates might be labeled cheating. Through years of this training, many people absorb the message that capable individuals figure things out independently. Even the stories and media children consume shape these attitudes. How many fairy tales feature a hero who succeeds through individual effort rather than community support? How many movies show the protagonist refusing help, only to overcome challenges alone? These narratives aren't just entertainment. They're manuals for how society expects us to behave. Some children develop what psychologists call earned security. They learn that help will come if they signal their needs. Others experience learned helplessness when their requests consistently go unanswered. Most develop something in between. Conditional beliefs about when it's acceptable to ask for support and when they should handle things alone. The impact of these early experiences is magnified by timing. The brain develops critical interpersonal templates during childhood that serve as reference points for future relationships. A child who consistently experiences adults as unreliable when asked for help develops different neural pathways than one whose requests are met with consistent support. Attachment patterns, the ways we connect with primary caregivers, create templates for future relationships. Those with secure attachment typically find it easier to seek help when needed. Those with avoidant attachment often pride themselves on self-sufficiency. Those with anxious attachment might worry that asking for help will burden others and drive them away. Cultural contexts add another layer. Some families emphasize collective support, while others prize individual achievement. Immigrant families might particularly value self-reliance as a survival strategy in new environments. Religious traditions might emphasize either community interdependence or personal responsibility. These cultural messages become part of a child's understanding of how the world works. The good news is that while these roots run deep, they aren't immutable. Understanding the origins of your help avoidance patterns doesn't just explain them. It creates space to question whether they still serve you. Adult brains retain remarkable plasticity. New experiences can create new neural pathways that gradually override old programming. Recognizing these childhood influences doesn't mean blaming parents or teachers. Most were doing their best with the resources and knowledge available to them. Many were simply passing down the same messages they received. The point isn't to assign fault, but to understand how these early experiences continue to influence adult behavior. As we transition to our next section, remember that awareness of these deep roots is powerful. Once you recognize the childhood origins of your reluctance to seek help, you can begin to distinguish between patterns that developed for survival in your early environment and choices that serve you in your current reality. The independence paradox. When being self-sufficient becomes self-destructive. Building on our understanding of childhood roots, let's explore a fascinating contradiction that affects many self-reliant individuals. The very quality that seems like a strength, independence, can transform into a significant liability when taken to extremes. This is the independence paradox. On the surface, handling everything yourself seems admirable. You don't burden others. You develop diverse skills. You maintain complete control over outcomes. You avoid the vulnerability of depending on someone who might disappoint you. These benefits are real and immediate, which is why the pattern persists. However, beneath this surface-level efficiency lurks a more complex reality. The person who never asks for help often works longer hours, experiences more stress, and makes more mistakes than someone who leverages collective resources. What appears to be strength can actually be a limitation in disguise. Consider the practical costs. Time spent reinventing solutions that others have already perfected. Energy drained by tasks that aren't your specialty. Opportunities missed because you can only be in one place, learning one thing at one time. The self-sufficient person often achieves less, not more, than someone comfortable with appropriate interdependence. The emotional toll is equally significant. Constant self-reliance creates pressure that rarely relents. There's no safety net, no backup plan, no shared responsibility. Every problem becomes yours alone to solve. This isolated approach to challenges often leads to burnout. That state of complete mental, physical, and emotional exhaustion that happens when demands consistently exceed resources. Relationships suffer too. People who refuse help often struggle to form deep connections. Intimacy requires mutual vulnerability, a willingness to both support and be supported. One-sided relationships where you're always the helper, but never the helped create imbalance. Friends and partners eventually sense the invisible barrier and either push against it, creating conflict, or respect it, creating distance. The workplace impact is particularly ironic. While avoiding asking for help might seem like a way to appear competent, it often achieves the opposite. Colleagues may view the never asks for help person as unapproachable, arrogant, or not a team player. Managers might hesitate to assign complex projects that require collaboration. The intended impression of capability backfires into a perception of poor interpersonal skills. Decision quality typically suffers as well. Humans have inherent cognitive biases that affect our thinking. We overvalue information that confirms what we already believe. We miss blind spots in our knowledge. We fall prey to groupthink when isolated. Asking for input from others helps counteract these tendencies, leading to better choices. Even health outcomes are affected. Research consistently shows that social connection improves both mental and physical well-being. People with strong support networks live longer, recover from illness faster, and report higher life satisfaction. By contrast, those who isolate themselves through excessive self-reliance experience higher rates of depression, anxiety, and even cardiovascular problems. The paradox becomes especially pronounced during major life transitions. Job changes, relocations, becoming a parent, facing illness. These situations naturally exceed any individual's existing knowledge and resources. Yet these are precisely the times when fiercely independent people often double down on self-reliance, exactly when they most need support. Perhaps most troubling is how excessive independence can become self-perpetuating. The more you handle alone, the more you're expected to handle alone. Others stop offering help because they assume you don't need or want it. This creates a feedback loop where independence becomes increasingly obligatory rather than chosen. Breaking this cycle requires recognizing a fundamental truth. True strength isn't found in isolation, but in appropriate connection. The most resilient systems in nature aren't self-contained units, but interconnected networks. Trees share nutrients through underground fungal networks. Animals form mutually beneficial relationships across species. Humans evolved as tribal beings, whose survival depended on cooperation. Reframing independence means distinguishing between self-sufficiency as a capacity versus a requirement. Having the ability to handle things alone when necessary is valuable. Feeling obligated to handle everything alone, always, is harmful. The healthiest approach is flexible independence. The freedom to be self-reliant when appropriate and connected when beneficial. This shift isn't about swinging to complete dependence. It's about finding the middle path of interdependence, where everyone both gives and receives support based on their changing circumstances and abilities. This balance allows for the benefits of self-reliance without its destructive extremes. As we move to our next section, consider this question. If someone close to you operated with the same level of self-reliance you expect from yourself, would you consider it healthy? Or would you worry they were taking on too much? Often, we can see in others what we've normalized in ourselves. Silent signals, identifying when someone needs help but can't ask. As we've seen, the inability to ask for help often hides behind a facade of competence. This creates a particular challenge. How do we recognize when someone in our life is struggling but unable to reach out? Understanding these silent signals can make you more effective at supporting others, and perhaps more aware of your own unspoken needs. The most obvious signs are changes in behavior. The typically punctual colleague who starts missing deadlines. The friend who cancels plans repeatedly. The family member whose usually clean home becomes increasingly disorganized. These shifts don't necessarily mean someone needs help, but they often indicate something has changed in their capacity to manage their responsibilities. Physical appearance can provide important clues. Unusual fatigue, weight changes, neglected grooming, or frequently appearing exhausted might suggest someone is overwhelmed. Their resources are being channeled to merely surviving, rather than maintaining their usual standards. Communication patterns often shift when someone needs help but can't ask directly. Watch for increased irritability, unusual defensiveness, or sudden withdrawal. These reactions might seem like pushing others away, but they frequently mask an underlying struggle the person doesn't know how to address. Listen carefully to how people talk about their challenges. Phrases like, "I just need to try harder," or "I should be able to handle this," can indicate someone holding themselves to unrealistic standards. Similarly, consistent self-criticism, "I'm so disorganized," or "I can't get anything right," might signal someone drowning in expectations they can't meet alone. The tendency to minimize problems is another red flag. When someone consistently describes significant challenges as "no big deal," or deflects concern with "I'm fine," they may be trying to convince themselves as much as others. This minimization often accompanies a belief that their struggles shouldn't require assistance. Paradoxically, increased helping behavior can sometimes indicate a need for help. Some people compensate for feeling overwhelmed by becoming even more supportive of others. They might volunteer for additional responsibilities or become intensely focused on solving others' problems, anything to avoid acknowledging their own needs. Work habits can reveal hidden struggles. Perfectionism that delays completion, overcommitment to tasks, or difficulty delegating all might suggest someone trapped in proving their competence. Similarly, chronic overwork, staying at the office latest, sending emails at midnight, working through weekends, often masks an inability to acknowledge limitations. Social withdrawal frequently accompanies an unacknowledged need for support. When people can't ask for help, they sometimes remove themselves from situations where their struggles might become visible. They decline invitations, participate less in conversations, or physically isolate themselves. Body language provides subtle but important information. Hunched posture, avoiding eye contact, nervous gestures, or visible tension can all communicate distress that words don't express. These physical signs often appear before conscious awareness of needing help has formed. Digital behavior changes can offer additional clues in our connected world. Unusual social media patterns, either complete silence or suddenly increased activity, delayed responses to messages, status updates posted at odd hours suggesting sleep difficulties. These virtual signals often parallel real-world struggles. For those in leadership positions, work quality issues might indicate an employee needs support they can't request. Unusual errors, inconsistent performance, difficulty prioritizing, or missed details from typically thorough individuals can all suggest someone operating beyond their capacity. Recognizing these signals matters because it creates opportunities for offering help in ways that preserve dignity. Rather than waiting for a direct request that may never come, you can create openings. "I have some extra time this week if you could use a hand with that project." Or, "I've faced something similar before and would be happy to share what worked for me." Sometimes the most effective approach is normalizing the need for support. Sharing your own experiences of benefiting from help can reduce the perceived risk for someone hesitant to appear vulnerable. Simple statements like, "I couldn't have finished that without my team's input," model that interdependence is normal, not exceptional. Being specific in your offers helps overcome the barrier of vagueness. Rather than, "Let me know if you need anything," which places the burden back on the struggling person to identify and request help. Try, "I'm going to the store. Can I pick something up for you?" Or, "Would it help if I took notes during this meeting so you can focus on the discussion?" Timing matters too. Sometimes people are more receptive to assistance during transitional moments, at the beginning of a project, after a significant change, or when starting something new. These natural inflection points can make accepting help feel less like an admission of inadequacy and more like a normal part of adaptation. Creating safe spaces for vulnerability is perhaps most important of all. When people know their struggles won't be judged, mocked, or held against them, they become more willing to acknowledge when they're drowning rather than swimming. This psychological safety is the foundation for breaking through the barriers we've explored. As we move into our final section, consider how these signals might appear in your own life. The signs you've learned to recognize in others might be the same ones you display when you need support, but find it difficult to ask. Breaking the cycle. Practical strategies to overcome resistance and learn to ask for help. Throughout our exploration, we've uncovered the complex psychology behind help avoidance, from childhood programming to fear of judgment, from the illusion of independence to the subtle signals of struggling. Now comes the most important question. How do we change these deeply ingrained patterns? How do we break the cycle, both for ourselves and others? Change begins with small steps in safe contexts. Rather than immediately tackling your most vulnerable areas, start with lower-stakes situations. Ask for directions when lost. Request a book recommendation from a colleague. Seek advice about a minor decision. These small interactions build the help-seeking muscle gradually. Reframing help-seeking as resource optimization rather than personal deficiency creates a mental shift. Business leaders don't hesitate to leverage available resources. They'd consider it foolish not to. Apply this same efficiency mindset to personal challenges. Your goal isn't to do everything yourself. It's to achieve the best outcome with available resources, including other people's knowledge and skills. Practice the language of requests until it becomes more comfortable. Many people struggle not just with the concept of asking for help, but with the actual words. Rehearse phrases like, "Would you be willing to?" or "I could use your perspective on," until they feel more natural. Remember that clear, specific requests are more likely to receive positive responses than vague expressions of overwhelm. Develop awareness of your physical responses when considering asking for help. Does your heart rate increase? Do your shoulders tense? Does your breathing become shallow? These bodily reactions signal activation of the threat response we discussed earlier. Recognizing them allows you to use calming techniques before the discomfort leads to automatic avoidance. Create accountability by sharing your intention to improve in this area. Tell a trusted friend or mentor that you're working on becoming more comfortable with asking for help. Knowing someone else is aware of your goal makes you more likely to notice opportunities for growth, rather than automatically falling back into self-reliance. Start a help inventory to build awareness of how much assistance you already receive and provide. For 1 week, note every instance where you help others and where others help you. Most people discover they're comfortable giving help, but maintain a significant imbalance in receiving it. This concrete data can challenge the belief that independence is your default state. Address perfectionistic thinking that makes asking for help seem like failure. Practice saying phrases like, "I don't need to have all the answers," or "Collaboration leads to better outcomes than isolation." When you catch yourself thinking, "I should know this already," counter with, "No one knows everything. That's why we specialize and share knowledge." Use role models who effectively balance independence and help-seeking. Identify people you respect who appear comfortable both handling things autonomously when appropriate and drawing on others' resources when beneficial. Study how they make requests, how they express gratitude, and how they maintain their dignity while acknowledging their needs. Separate identity from behavior. Many help-avoidant people have fused their self-concept with complete self-reliance. Remind yourself, asking for help is something I do, not something I am. This distinction creates psychological flexibility. You can maintain your sense of competence while changing specific behaviors. Practice receiving graciously. When someone offers assistance, resist the urge to deflect or immediately reciprocate. Instead, make eye contact, say, "Thank you," and fully acknowledge their contribution. This conscious reception helps rewire the discomfort many feel when positioned as recipients rather than providers. Experiment with diverse help-seeking approaches to find what works for you. Some people find it easier to ask for help in writing rather than face-to-face. Others prefer group settings where the attention feels less focused on their request. Still, others benefit from established structures like mentoring programs or professional services where help-seeking is explicitly expected. Recognize the distinction between dependency and interdependency. Dependency implies one-way reliance. Interdependency acknowledges mutual exchange based on complementary strengths. Framing help-seeking as part of a reciprocal system, rather than a one-sided taking, makes it more palatable for those who pride themselves on contribution. Document the positive outcomes that result from asking for help. Perhaps you completed a project faster, learned a valuable skill, or formed a deeper connection with someone. This evidence counters the brain's negativity bias, which tends to emphasize risks while overlooking benefits of vulnerability. Consider the example you set for others. When you ask for help appropriately, you don't just solve your immediate problem. You create cultural permission for others to do the same. Parents who model help-seeking raise children more comfortable with interdependence. Managers who acknowledge knowledge gaps encourage team members to do likewise. Expand your definition of strength to include knowing when to draw on collective resources. True resilience isn't found in isolated endurance, but in the ability to adapt using all available supports. The strongest trees aren't those that never bend in the wind, but those with deep root systems connected to surrounding organisms. Finally, be patient with yourself through this process. Patterns established over decades don't transform overnight. There will be setbacks, times when you automatically revert to handling everything alone. Instead of seeing these moments as failures, view them as valuable data about which situations trigger your independence reflex and which environments feel safe enough for vulnerability. The journey from reflexive self-reliance to balanced interdependence isn't linear. It's a gradual rewiring of neural pathways, a slow rebuilding of trust, a careful expansion of identity. But with consistent practice, what once felt uncomfortable eventually becomes natural. The fortress walls don't disappear entirely, but they develop gates that you can choose to open when connection serves you better than isolation. The ultimate freedom isn't found in never needing others. It's in having the discernment to know when self-sufficiency serves and when reaching out elevates, and having the courage to act on that knowledge, regardless of old programming. In that balanced place, you'll find not just greater effectiveness, but deeper connection, reduced stress, and the authentic strength that comes from knowing exactly when and how to say, "I could use some help with this."